Hello, my name is Dean Contover. Welcome to the show, Current Buzz. Thanks for watching. We have attorney Tamburro here, Dale Tamburro. Thanks for coming. We're going to talk about estate planning. Estate planning is something that you should think about, even if you're in your 20s, right? 30s, 40s, 50s. And I suggest that you get a piece of paper and pencil and write some information down. We'll be talking about wills. We'll be talking about power of attorney, health proxies, things like that that are very important to people, especially when they're getting a little older in life and they're not thinking about this. That's why I brought you in, right? So estate planning, what is estate planning?
Well, Dean, first of all, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Estate planning has to do with really planning if something happened that isn't in the plans. So, health-wise, disability, financial, bad things happening to family members in the same way, a child dying before you, stuff like that. But really it has to do with the legality of how you handle disability and death and other kind of issues like that. So once you're an adult, which is 18, then these are actual issues then. It's just that when you're 18, 20 years old, you don't think as much about being disabled or dying as you might when you're 70, 72. But yes, you're right, what you said in the beginning, there is reason to plan even once you're 20 years old.
It's really interesting. I remember you saying one time that if somebody turns 18, they should have a health proxy so your parents can make decisions for you even at 18.
If you're 18 and your doctor gets a phone call from your parent, the doctor has to say, I can't talk to you unless your son or daughter gives me consent. So there was a story of a woman who dropped into a coma at 26 years of age. So who can deal with the doctors? Legally, no one. Not at that point. If she doesn't have a form of a health proxy, which is what Massachusetts uses, then you have to go into court and get a guardianship. And one of the general themes in estate planning is you don't want to go to court. You don't want to go to court. You don't want to go to court. So without a health care proxy, if that woman's disabled, she's stuck in limbo in her coma while people are going to court. And in this particular person that I'm talking about, it was called the Shivo case. It was very famous.
Right, I remember that.
The parents wanted one thing, the husband wanted a different thing. So while she's in a coma, they're fighting. This is what you don't want, by not just in terms of money and the well-being of the person because of the delay that's involved, but for the family harmony. It's completely destroyed by things like that. And if she had signed a document that cost hundreds of dollars, she would say, this is who I want making decisions for me if I can't. And this is who I want if that person can't.
So if your child turns 18, get
It's a little weird, morbid, I guess, to some people. Sign this thing in case you drop into a coma. Or do a will just in case you die. It's a little harder to talk to people who are that young. Usually people do it when they get married, certainly when they have a kid. So there's all these landmark things in life that happen that might trigger it. Sometimes it's a bad thing that happens that triggers it. Or, but basically, becoming an adult by law is one of the triggers that people ignore.
I see. Let's talk about a will, all right? That's basic. Why should someone have a will? Do they need an attorney for a will?
There's a misnomer about wills. People think if you have a will, you're avoiding the court system. Now, what a will does is dictates what happens in the court system. Okay? So
this takes place after one is deceased.
Right. A will is worthless. It's not even a completed agreement until you die. It's submitted to court and approved by court.
I see.
So some people will say, in my will it says I leave my house to my kids, so I don't have to worry about probate. It's just the opposite. The will has to be put through probate to get it approved and accepted and have enforceability. So a will is the document that I want to use the least of all my documents when we get talking more details like about trusts and so forth.
That's coming next.
Well, all estate documents from my perspective, and of course my perspective because I am a lawyer, is that you shouldn't go to Staples and buy your will. It's just penny wise and dime foolish, okay? And you can go online and you can get wills that are okay and might actually work.
In Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts, some of them are generic federally, and that's not good.
Right.
But estate planning has to do with more than just doing the documents. It's making people understand why you're doing that document, the next step in the document, and the next question. And what I've been told by clients is, Dale, your documents are great, but it's the way you teach us and ask us the next question that we don't even think of because we don't know to think it.
Right,
to ask
exactly.
it.
That's why I have you here.
Right. That's the value that comes with having a lawyer do it.
I see. Okay. So can you have a will plus a trust? And what is a trust?
Okay. That would take a while. I'll do my
Right.
best.
Right.
Yes, you would have both. But what would happen is you would use the trust as the main place that you would dictate what happens if you were disabled or if you died. And then the will becomes a safety net in case you mess up. So for instance, you own your house just in your name.
Right.
That's a probate asset. That means it's going to be controlled by the will. Instead, if you put the house into a trust, the trust owns the house. When you die, the trust keeps going, and you don't have to have probate for that house.
I see.
So a trust, there's a lot of ways to describe it, but my seminar usually takes an hour and a half for me to do it. So it's look at it as like an entity, like not a human being, but like a corporation or some other entity that can own things. So your trust, you create it, and it's sort of like a container that you can put assets in, house, money, investments, and then you put the things into the trust, and now the trust owns your house. So if the trust is the type of trust that dictates that you still have complete control over it, it's like you still own it.
Okay.
So if you're healthy and never die, there's no change. But eventually, you're not going to be healthy or you are going to die, and that's when the trust does its magic. So I can go on, but
So let me
Yeah.
try to.
Yeah.
A recent situation that I'm aware of is that somebody got divorced. The child was a minor, and they put a trust on the child till they were 18 to protect their assets from the ex-spouse.
okay. So there's trust accounts.
Okay.
There's bank accounts that are designed for minors. But what a trust does is it can say, I leave X amount of money to so and so.
Right.
But so and so can't. And there's someone called a trustee who manages it for this minor.
Right.
And the trust will say that this beneficiary, this child, can only have X, Y, and Z until they're 18. And they can only have A, B, and C until they're 25 or
Right.
whatever. So you can design the trust to have this person a beneficiary to receive things, but maybe because of age or a gambling propensity or some kind of either drug or alcohol, whatever, or a disability that dictates that they shouldn't have all the money at once, you can drag it out for as long as you want in all sorts of different ways. That's another different benefit of a trust.
So in other words, you can, if they went to college, that trust could pay for the college.
Right.
And then and if there's more money in there at 25,
Right.
that trust could
Right.
pay
Right.
them, or 30.
Right. I've had people drag what their kids get out until they're 50.
Okay.
But the trustee can always use it if there's a need, like school, medical emergency, stuff like
Right.
that.
So I'm trying to get this down in regards to trust, because it's very important that people know that, so you have a trust, right? And should you have, if you have 4 or 5 children, should you put your money in the trust, or it should go to a will, or both?
No, you want to use the trust if you have a trust. All right.
Okay.
A lot of times people create a trust. They have a will because the backup, as I said, is
Right.
the backup, and then they go home and they don't put anything in it. I put the house in because legally that's just paperwork. But if you have a $500,000 Fidelity account and it's just in your name, and you have a trust that's you have complete control of, you should change the fidelity to the trust more often than not.
I see.
Because otherwise you may be doing probate on top of doing a trust. A trust is not inexpensive, but probate's a lot more expensive. You certainly don't want to have to do both if you can avoid it.
Right, right.
Explaining.
Probate is going to a judge, and they make the decision.
So probate in Massachusetts works this way. You die, you submit the will. It usually takes 3 or 4 months for the person who's in charge of the will to get appointed. That means everything that's subject to the will is sort of frozen. Investment accounts, real estate. And
Title of the car.
the car's a pain.
Right?
A pain, yeah.
That's right.
A car too.
Yeah.
Although if you're married, there's a shortcut for the car.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but the bottom line
It
is.
should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The probate process takes 14 months minimum.
Wow.
And most take 2 to 4 years because people drag their feet to getting things done.
Talking about a title, I don't know if you know where your title is. I mean, keep it in your important papers, because that's like having a deed to a house, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's in my intro seminar,
Right.
which I think I'm doing in March this month in Chelmsford. There is a part of the seminar that I give that is only about what you should be doing at home before you come see me. And it's about getting organized with your information, knowing where things are, and having a place where someone else can find it.
On my title of my car, I have 2 people, my daughter and myself.
Right.
If something happens to me,
Then
it
it's
just
hers.
rolls.
Right.
It just rolls over. And that's a suggestion for people.
That's one way to do it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not married and you have a car and you know where your title is, that's having someone else on at the title just makes it so if you die, then you don't have big problems. She would take the title, bring it down to the RMV with a death certificate, and they would give her a new title.
What's the difference between irrevocable and revocable trusts?
Big difference. Well, the terms are clear. Revocable means you can change the trust as long as you're the creator of the trust.
That's a living trust, right?
Yeah. So when you have a trust, there's a person who creates it, or persons, and then there's someone who manages the trust called the trustee, and then there's a variety of different kind of beneficiaries. In the most common trust, which is a living revocable trust, terminology will get you a little nutty. John Smith creates this trust for himself. We call it the John Smith Revocable Trust. John Smith is the initial trustee of the trust, and John Smith is the lifetime beneficiary of the trust. So from that perspective, I want people to understand in that trust, John Smith still has access to everything he had before or after he put it in, okay? So like I say, if he never dies, never gets sick, it's like he didn't do anything. But if John Smith gets sick, the document will say, this is the person who I want, who John Smith wants as the backup person to manage what's in the trust, the successor trustee.
Right.
John's picking that person, not a judge, not a battle within the family. He's stating it in the trust. He can always change it. So he gets sick, they're the trustee. He dies, they're the trustee. The beneficiary clause will read, I leave everything when I die to my 3 kids. What happens if one of the 3 kids dies first? You put it in the trust. A trust is like writing a book. I'm the co-author with you. It's your book,
right,
but I'm helping you write it. So that's what a revocable trust does for you. An irrevocable trust, there's 2 purposes for an irrevocable trust in today's world. One has to do with life insurance, and the other one has to do with asset protection, specifically more often about nursing home protection. An irrevocable trust is just what it sounds like. You can't change most of what's in it. You can't, so you're restricting your rights, and that's a tricky thing. But what I want some people to understand is, despite all the convoluted things they might hear, if you're trying to protect assets, you have to cut yourself off from the asset, all right, in general. So if you put $100,000 into a revocable trust, you can always take the $100,000. If you put $100,000 into a properly drafted asset protection irrevocable trust, you can't have the $100,000 ever again.
And the children can't get that $100,000.
They're not supposed to get it until you die.
If it's laid out that way.
Right, but we sometimes lay it out intentionally so they can.
Okay.
But the point is, you can't.
I see.
And
So
that's
that
how it
protects you.
protects it. Yes.
That's like going to a nursing home and not a nursing home, a funeral home, and getting the irrevocable
Yep.
payment.
Yep.
And
You prepay it, yep.
Prepay it, and they can't
That
go
can't be
after
touched,
it.
right.
The state can't
Right.
go after it.
Right.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So that's to protect you from nursing homes to a certain degree.
And Massachusetts right now is really giving us a hard time about it. I mean, the program is also called Medicaid. So people say, what's Medicaid, what's Mass Health?
Right.
They're basically the same thing for long-term care like nursing home. Federal term is Medicaid. Massachusetts is Mass Health.
Medicaid is 50% federal and 50% state, right? Something to that effect?
It's a sharing.
It's a sharing.
Medicaid is the federal version of it that federal government puts into the program,
right.
and each state also puts into their individual program. So the laws in each state can be different.
I see.
So Massachusetts is middle of the road, shall we say. There's some states that say if you have too much income, you can't get it no matter what. Massachusetts says you can have income. It's not about your income. We're going to take your income, but beyond your income, we'll pay for your care if you qualify otherwise.
Right. So something about $2,000 minimum that you can have as assets.
Yeah,
it's kind of low, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's all sorts of little tricks to that. But if you are not married,
right,
you can only have $2,000 of countable assets.
That's nothing.
Right. It's nothing. But your house isn't countable.
Oh, I see.
So you can have a house worth, if the equity is $858,000 or less, and that number changes every year,
right.
You can actually qualify for Mass Health owning an $800,000 house. Now, they're going to put a lien on the house,
right,
but the lien per month is significantly less than the private pay amount. So, again, another hour-and-a-half seminar.
Yeah.
It's complicated, but what happens is a lot of people, when they go to a nursing home, the nursing home will help them fill out the Mass Health application, but they won't do any planning to save them any money.
Right.
So the people think, well, I'm getting it for free, but nursing home costs $14,000 a month. If I save you 1 month of nursing home costs, I'm saving you $14,000. Like paying for the funeral is one of the legit ways to spend your money.
Right.
That can be $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 right there.
Up front.
If you spend that money on the nursing home, get yourself down to $2,000, who's paying for the funeral? The kids after you die.
Right.
Instead, you pay for
Right.
it now. It basically saves your kid that money.
The aggravation of finding the plot of a funeral home, or whatever. In regards to families, what have you seen? I have a couple other questions, but what have you seen? What's your suggestion when there's 4 or 5 kids in a family? What's your suggestion?
Well,
Because some of the kids want your money, some of them don't.
Well, what the kids want is secondary to what you want, first of all. And so older people especially, get influenced by different things. And I always tell them whatever you want to do between your kids is your business because it's yours.
Right.
And what the kids want is important to you, but it's only a piece of what you should be looking at. The more kids you have, the more potential for problems you have.
Right.
So the issues I get into when there's multiple kids is who are you putting in charge? So who are you putting in charge if you're sick, and who are you putting in charge if you die?
Right.
So this is sort of...
Do they know where you want to be placed?
Well, you need to communicate.
Yeah,
that's one of the
right.
things I say. You need to communicate about, and get your affairs in order. Have your plot.
Right.
Prepay your funeral if you want. But also you need to discuss what you want. And there's no document that you necessarily say, when I die, I want to be dressed in this thing, or I want this to come with me. You don't. There's no specific document that you put that information in. If you put it in your will, most times people are buried before anybody even reads
Right.
the will. So you need to again get organized. You have, I call it the drawer. You have to have a drawer at home with
Right.
all sorts of stuff. And one of them would be, what do you want if you die? Where's your dry cleaning? Because we want it, the dry
good
clean.
point.
Well, dry cleaners
Yeah.
open up thrift shops for all the clothes they end up with that no one comes and collects.
Wow.
But
Good point.
Who's your accountant? Who's your lawyer? Who's your financial advisor? Who's your church person that you want that means something to you? Who's your insurance guy? There's all sorts of.
And where do you go for your doctor? Who's your doctor?
Yeah, doctor. How about your best friend from college who's still alive 50 years ago that lives in Boca Raton or whatever, and you want them to know if you die?
Right.
Who do you want
Right.
to be informed of things? Yeah.
There's another thing I want to get because I only have
Yeah.
about 5 minutes.
Wow.
Power. I know time flies. Power of attorney. Explain why it's important for elderly people to sign over a power of attorney, and it stops when the person's
Dies.
deceased. All
Yeah.
right.
So power of attorney is a document we designate people to make financial decisions to you. It's analogous to the healthcare proxy. But both those documents end when you end. So the power of attorney, people think, well, I have power of attorney, so after they die, I can still do things.
Right.
As soon as the financial institutions know that the person died, you can throw the power of attorney away. It's worthless. And then it jumps into the trust or the will.
I see.
So yes, power of attorney, durable power of attorney. All of these documents, will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, and trust, they need to be drafted right. You have to ask multiple layers of questions. You need to have the right fiduciary, and you need to have a backup fiduciary. You need to know who you want doing these things, but if they can't, who's next in line?
I see.
In some of the documents, you can have so you can have two people doing them. All of the documents allow that except for the healthcare proxy.
Right. Healthcare proxy. Everyone should have one. You go online, I think, and download it, I presume.
You can, but mine's 11 pages long.
You're kidding me.
So my recommendation is if you're not going to do anything with a lawyer, that's the one document you can download. You need to sign it properly. You need to witness it, notarize it.
Right.
As I said, you need 2 versions. It's a 3-paragraph one that you get. The state makes it available
Right.
to you. It's free.
Right.
It's not the best, but of all the documents, if you're gonna go penny wise and dime foolish kind of thing, that's the one that will still probably work 85% of the time.
And if you're going through the VA, get one through the VA.
Yeah, they probably have a similar
yeah,
document
they
the
do.
state have.
Yeah.
When you come to a lawyer and you do it, 95% of people need a will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney. Closer to 85% need some form of a trust or multiple trusts. There's things that trusts can do with taxes that you're going to be facing in Massachusetts when you die. Right. A lot of different things that we're not talking about here because of our.
What happens if somebody dies and they have a credit card bill? That's pretty easy.
Theoretically, it's a probate debt. The credit card company would have to file proper documents and then you'd have to pay them. But if there's no probate assets, if everything's in the trust, then they're out of luck.
Right. Okay. That's good. And HIPAA release. What is HIPAA release?
HIPAA is. I put HIPAA right into the healthcare proxy.
do you?
So a HIPAA releases. There's lots of confidential protection for people about their medical records. That's just another one. So I just build it right into the healthcare proxy.
Now, you said, do you have your healthcare proxy online, or can somebody? Because we have your internet address.
I don't put the document out there, but people want to see it. I show it to them sometimes in my seminars. It's just, it's the kind of thing. It's my product, so it's
Right.
it's not designed to be free from me. It's supposed to be.
Oh, okay.
It's designed for you to come in and talk about a lot more than just the healthcare product.
Yeah, I think we put your address on the camera. So
Yeah, no, I encourage people very strongly to meet with someone. When I do my seminars, I can't hear everything.
Right.
Free consultation.